Hello and welcome to James's editing tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at Adobe Audition. I'm just going to go over some of the basics of how Audition works. So today we're going to be editing a radio advert, so I'm just going to first import my audio that I need to edit with. So in terms of importing any audio into Audition, what we're going to do is we're going to drag them into here. We could go File, Import, or we could just import file that way. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it straight in. So I'm just going to drag these files here and drop them in. Obviously, you'll have to do the same wherever your files are located. And I've just got a few here that I'm just going to drag in as well. Okay. So here's our files. Now we could double click one of these and it brings up that sound that we've selected. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing what we call a multi-track session. So we'll be editing multiple sounds in one timeline essentially. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go File, New, and Multi-track Session. Or you can just select multi-track there and that will do that. But I'm just going to go File, New, Multi-track Session for now. And we're going to name this session. So I'm just going to do this tutorial, but obviously you can name it whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to change any of these settings today, but you can change other settings there as well. So I'm going to press OK. And here it creates a multi-track session, which means we've got different layers that we can apply different audio tracks to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in the first sound that I'm going to edit today. So I'm going to drag in some voiceover that I've done. I'm going to put it into there. It'll tell me to convert the file, so I'm just going to press OK, just because some of the settings of the audio isn't the same as the one for the timeline. And you can see that my audio is in there. Now, in terms of moving along time, we can move that up here. So I can move this little bar here, and that lets me see the rest of the timeline. Or I can zoom in by selecting the edge of it, and it basically lets us have a little insight into whatever is in this little box here. So I can then move it along if I need to. Or if I want to see the whole thing, I can zoom all the way out. Okay. So I can obviously play this back and I'll be able to listen to what that sounds like. And you can see there's a bit of a rustle there that I don't want.
Hear the sound of the startup screen.
And we can hear the rest of the audio from the clip. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to remove that opening rustle there. So I'm just going to trim that so it starts there.
Hear the sound of the startup screen.
And after that's said, I'm going to have a little sound effect here, which I'm going to drag in a second. And then I'm going to have sound effects in between these gaps. Now, maybe the gap is too small, or maybe you've done it in a different way where you've done it quite close to each other and haven't left a gap. We can split this clip up by moving your marker to wherever you need it to go. Right-click it, select Split, and it splits it into two, and that's then separate to the clip that I've already got in there. Okay, so I'm going to put the sound effect in here when it says hear the sound of the startup screen. So I'm going to select the startup sound that I've got there, and I'm going to put it on a different layer. So track 2 here. I'm going to press OK, and then we're going to press that
startup screen. Feel.
Now you can see that the sound is quite overwhelming there. So if I want to change the volume, I can do it in a few different ways, but the easiest way to do it, if you just select this sound that you want to change the volume for, and there's a yellow line, you can see it more prominently in the track 1 there, but there's one here as well. And if we highlight over it, actually says volume. So if I select that volume and it highlights it, I can then drag that up or down, and that will change the volume there. So if I bring that down a bit,
of the startup screen.
Maybe it needs to be a bit quieter, maybe. Let's try that again.
Of the startup screen. Feel the comfort.
Okay, that sounds good. And then we're just going to try and drag in a few other sound effects here. So I've got one that's just a drone in the background, so I'm going to put that for the entire thing.
Hear the sound of the startup screen.
Bit later on.
Feel the comfort of the Super Grip controller.
So I'm going to do the same thing for this one. So obviously whatever you've done, you might want certain sound effects or certain things to appear. This one has quite a few different effects in this, so I'm going to split this one here. I'm going to delete that. And then I can put that in after there.
Of the Super Grip controller. See the crisp 8K graphics in stunning detail.
So let's go for the gameplay effect sound. Sorry, I put it on the wrong layer. Let's put it on that layer. That's a bit too loud, so I'm going to drag that down a bit. Let's move this along a bit.
Play the new.
Now, here's an interesting part. Here, I want the sound to still carry on, but I want to still be able to hear my voiceover. So what I'm going to do is when I've got the volume selected, if you just select it once, it'll put a little dot on there. So that's what we call a keyframe, and I can do it so it goes down a bit here. So what the volume will do now is it'll get to this point, it'll then reduce up to this point, and it'll carry on playing at a lower volume. So we're kind of dipping the sound for a certain part of the
8K
the
graphics in stunning detail. Play the new Power Station gaming console.
Okay.
Experience the future. Feel the.
And that sound just kind of cuts off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade this out. Now, the easiest way to fade out, I could just create another dot and then do it that way. That could be one way. But I find the easiest way is just select this square that's at the corner of every clip that you select. And what that will do is if you drag that in, it'll fade that volume out. And we can make it so it fades slowly or quickly or anything like that.
Gaming console. Experience the future. Feel the power. Power Station. 8K.
So I'm just going to put in one more thing. I'm going to put a little jingle in here. So I'm going to put that on a different layer. So I can actually move down this a bit further. So I'll put it on track 6. Put that there. Okay. So this is a jingle that I've recorded. And all that sound is just me saying the word Power Station in the most robotic voice as I possibly can.
Power Station.
But what we can do is we can apply an effect to that to allow it to have a bit more of a robotic voice. And I'll show you that in a second how we're going to do that. But first off, I'm just going to show you a few little default sound effects that we can apply. So if I select the top track here, I can on the right hand side I can see a few presets that I can apply to my audio. So if I select dialogue to begin with, under EQ here, there's different presets I can play with. I can do this manually, obviously, as well but if I do some of the presets, it gives me a few ideas about what I could do to change the sound of the voice. So, for example, if I select old radio, this will change the audio to sound a bit more like it's coming from a radio. So, play that back now.
Experience the future. Feel the power. Power Station.
And I can adjust how much that does that by on this little setting here. So if I play that back again now.
Experience the future. Feel the power.
Obviously, we don't need to create it for this particular one, but it gives you an idea of some different effects that you might want to create based on whatever idea you have for your session that you're creating. So I'm going to keep it as it was originally. And the final effect that I'm just going to quickly show you is that jingle that I've done. So if I select this one, we can apply any effects to our audio by going to Effects, and we can see a few different ones that we can apply here. So I'm going to select, for example, modulation and flanger here. And this will allow me to tune this in different ways. But there's also a few presets that we can apply, and you can see what this will do straight away, and it does some really weird stuff with it. So if I select this one, for example, and play that individual track back,
Power Station.
already it has a much more robotic sound to it. And obviously some of these other ones will have alternative effects to it. So if I select this one,
Power Station.
it sounds even more robotic. So I'm just going to go with that one and close that down, and that effect is now applied to that clip.
Power Station. Experience the future. Feel the power. Power Station. 8K.
So this drone, that sound that's going on in the background, obviously lasts much longer than I need it to, so I'm just going to trim that so it lasts the length of the radio ad. I'm just going to also fade that out as well as. Once you're happy with your edit, all we need to do now is export it. So what we're going to do is go to File, Export, and we're going to go multi-track mix down an entire session. Okay. So I can call it what I need to do. So I'm just going to call this tutorial 1. Choose where you're going to save it to. So I'm just saving mine to the desktop. Obviously, you'll probably want to save it to somewhere you know where you're saving it to. Format MP3 is absolutely fine. If you're happy with that, press OK, and that will then export your audio as an MP3 file that you can then take anywhere else after that. And that concludes the tutorial for Adobe Audition. That just obviously goes over the basics, but obviously there are other effects that you may want to apply and have an experiment with if you want to create a certain sound to your audio. But it's worth experimenting with the different presets and the different effects that are on there. Other than that, see you next time.